Hey, how's everybody doing this morning? It's been a great show. The second presentation, the Tomoka presentation, wow, it really hit me that that's where it all began for me. It was I was 15 years old, and I can't believe at that age I was so interested in history, and I think it's led me to where I am today. You know, as a park manager. And managing rangers instead of being chased by park rangers. Um, so it's really cool to present, and I'm honored to be here. And thanks, Rachel, for pushing me through this. And I'll get started. Change slides. The 45,380 acre Charlotte Harbor Preserve State Park manages more than 130 cultural sites that provide evidence of a unique and internationally recognized progression of human cultures surviving in an estuarine environment. Artifacts evaluated for the master site file attest to more than 20 cultures and 13 site types represented in the preserve. Research from the area managed by the park suggests at least 10,000 years of human usage. The Native American cultures represented include late Archaic, Caloosahatchee, Glades, Safety Harbor, St. John's, and Weedon Island. The site types include Aboriginal boat, burials, prehistoric shell middens, prehistoric mounds, historic refuse, artifacts, ceramic scatters, prehistoric shell works. And two of our pre-Columbian sites, Big Mound Key and Jocelyn Island, are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Next slide. And I apologize, we made some changes to the notes this morning, and I was planning on using a printed version, so I'm switching between the PowerPoint and my Zoom. So when considering the needs of the cultural resources of the park, it's helped tremendously knowing the history of the past research in the lands that we manage. And when I say the history, it helped me to go back, you know, as far as the 1800s with when Clarence Moore came, and Frank Hamilton Cushing, Alice Hrdlicka. And it's amazing how excited I get whenever somebody finds, you know, there's new documents to examine. Is there something we've missed? Is there something that maybe could show us a change in the environment, something they saw in the 1890s that has been concealed until recently? And quite honestly, I'm trying to get out there before others do and before a site gets disturbed. So the systematic exploration, of course, dates back to them guys. In the mid 20th century, the Florida Park Service archaeologists, you know, some of the first state archaeologists, John Griffin, Hale Smith, Ripley Bullen, they all made contributions too. And they did some of the first site file updates and site file listings. It really wasn't, there was stuff going on in the 70s, 60s, 70s, but in the 1980s, research was directed to protect, preserve, and interpret the state managed sites pretty much as soon as it was established in 1985 as the Charlotte Harbor State Reserve. Dr. George Lohr was already very involved with Charlotte Harbor, and he's kind of the go-to guy. He's got a good handle on just about everything. He may be the only person besides myself that's visited every site, certainly in contemporary times. So the parks work with dozens of partners besides Dr. Lohr, specifically Division of Historic Resources and their public archaeology program. We sure do miss seeing those guys. We haven't had them down for a while. The public lands folks. University of Florida, Dr. Mark Hart, Karen Walker, Corbett Torrance, Michelle Cotty. I mean, there's just so many great names that have been through this park just in recent years that I've had the pleasure of working with over at Pineland and in the park. So documenting the conditions of the sites is an amazing thing. And it's been great to carry it over with the Florida Master Site File. But we've also conducted salvage projects and, tried to document the condition of the looted sites and doing some stratigraphic analysis, some radiocarbon dating, and gaining a better understanding of those thousands of years of rich cultures, that have left their mark on Charlotte Harbor. Next slide. So the park has a very active natural resource management program as well. The primary reason for acquisition of the lands that we manage was for protection of the water quality in the 5 aquatic preserves, all the way from Lemon Bay in the north down into Gasparilla Sound Aquatic Preserve and the Charlotte Harbor Aquatic Preserve, Cape Hayes Aquatic Preserve, Pine Island Sound, and Matlacha Pass. They're all part of the lands that we manage. They're all part of the aquatic preserves that we're protecting. We've treated thousands of acres of exotic invasive species of plants, helping the native plant species to make a recovery, and that's the terrestrial species and aquatic species. Didn't include pictures of the hogs in there, but the hogs have been making quite an impact on hydrologic conditions, definitely making more suitable habitat for mosquitoes with all their rooting. In the top left of the slide you see in front of you, it's one of our larger hydrologic restoration projects. That's here along Alligator Creek, and that's right here by my office. And then, of course, prescribed burning and some of our crews south of there. And that the slide in the center is archaeology files and surveys, and yeah, I'm not going to miss paper files, that's for sure. Surveys are challenging, though. I'm still looking for somebody good to make surveys accessible digitally. And then, of course, some of our brochures, the Park Service brochure, just generally outlining natural and cultural resource management, and our park brochure as well. So we try to visit the sites as frequently as possible, and we have an ambitious goal of surveying, these 130 plus sites, once every 2 years. And I'll be honest with you right now, I don't just visit the 130 sites. There's sites just outside our boundary that we take a look at as well. I know in a recent Cape Hayes Mound survey, well, recent, it's been over 10 years, but in those surveys, I told them to go and get everything as much as possible, because when was the next time I'm going to have a registered professional archaeologist working in the park? And it fit in well with the special category grant they had. And we were able to document, a lot more sites than the 130 we manage. And we also work with the Aquatic Preserve Program. They manage a bunch of island sites, and Rachel's worked with them as well. Rachel's been instrumental in getting them moving, actually. They really hadn't worked with the archaeology, the cultural resources in the aquatic preserves until Rachel came on board. So kudos for that. So we've also had some successful prosecutions by surveying these sites and through interactions with our neighbors as well. We've, the folks at Randell keep an eye on Pine Island. I've got city cops, I've got county cops, we've got other land managers, Lee County, Charlotte County, the water management districts, 2 of them, we have 2 of them here. And they're all keeping an eye out, and I try to give them at least a basic understanding of where our sites are and what you might see if somebody's looking to loot or treasure hunt has been the worst one. So we were able to get a couple prosecutions and convictions. And I have actually, I've only had 1 case in my 22 years. So I've been lucky. I don't know if it's a matter of me being out there more or us being out there more, or those relationships, but things have slowed down, or maybe we're just not catching them. I hope that's not the case. So records of our visits are kept at the park, and when warranted, updates to the master site file are submitted. When I first heard of the Public Archaeology Network's new, at the time, Heritage Monitoring Scouts program, I saw an opportunity to increase our surveillance of our sites, but I had initial concerns about the ability of minimally trained volunteers to be of assistance without a lot of investment of staff time for oversight, which, quite frankly, it might make a potential program less rewarding than it might be worth. As you'll see, my work with FPAN has helped me understand where this program is appropriate in the park. Next slide. So in January of 2020, Rachel, the public archaeology coordinator for FPAN here in the Southwest region, she emailed me and she proposed working with the park to survey some sites, do some 3D scanning of a critically eroding site, and possibly train some volunteers to do some monitoring too. Over the next few months, we worked together surveying 44 known sites using the Arches reporting system. We listed 2 new sites with the Florida Master Site File, and we checked out a few other areas that were potential sites, including conducting the 3D laser scanning at the Turtle Bay 2 site. That was ended up being, I think, 2 days in the field out there, and still waiting to see. I wish I could get a cool model like Phil got over at Tomoka. That's a really nice thing, but it wouldn't be quite as cool with an eroding site, and we didn't survey the entire site. It was just the exposed face with the critical erosion. So we also got to meet with potential volunteers at the Charlotte Harbor Environmental Center, and there was a lot of interest. And looking back, we got a lot done during a time when it was very challenging to work with others due to the pandemic. Next slide. So after selecting 44 sites, Rachel and I scheduled and rescheduled sometimes dates for visiting the sites that fit in with weather conditions and or the site conditions, be that mud or heat or other factors. But throughout the process, I was considering the possibility of the future use of the HMS volunteers for the work that we were doing. Would the resources be threatened by minimally trained folks visiting unsupervised? And when I'm talking about resources, not just the cultural resources, but these sites are also the sites of some rare and endangered plants, including a couple of orchids and cactus or cacti that only grow in sites, very close to or maybe just in the park. So had to really consider, again, it's going to be level of training and trust in people. And so I don't have all the answers yet. Would the resources be threatened? Maybe. Would the volunteers be threatened by the resources? That was more of a concern. I don't have to tell anybody on this probably that the heat in Florida is a killer. And we've had our cases of seasoned rangers working 10 minutes and they're back at the truck or back at the boat for the rest of the day and probably should have been taken to the hospital. And then other sites, they were just a walk in the park. We just walked down a trail and we did our surveys, but most of them not so much. While we can choose the survey dates to meet a range of weather conditions, we can't choose the location of the sites. So we utilized 4-wheel drive trucks, Polaris Ranger UTVs, an airboat, and a shallow water Carolina skiff for our visits. On the previous slide, I don't know if you noticed a great photograph of Rachel. There she is with COVID protection and airboat protection. Okay, moving on, next slide. We're getting there. Well, when planning a site visit, it's vital to get at least enough information that you can, to a certain degree, determine if changes have been occurring at the site. Since the condition of the sites at the park have been at least minimally documented for 40 years or so, we are the grateful owners of a lot of data. I almost forgot maps, more maps. Since we have 5 distinct geographic areas and spread out over 100+ miles of shoreline, some of these areas are as large as 20,000 acres. Something with 5 management units, Cape Hayes is 20,000 acres. You really hope you have some accurate maps. Of course, bringing the data into the field, as you know, can be difficult. Afternoon thunderstorms, crossing the harbor in an open boat in 5-foot waves, cold front wind gusts over 20 miles an hour, blowing all your documents around the site, and blowing you around the site at 20 miles an hour, and just working in the swamp generally. The Arches database looks like it has a capability of storing a lot of information in one place that can be accessed prior to, sometimes during, and certainly after the site visit to compile a survey report that's instantly available to others that have been selected by the user or Arches administrators. I say instantly, I know there is a level of review, and I appreciate that level of review, but it seems to be working pretty well. I don't want to oversell that portability aspect, but the database can be available from your phone or other mobile device over a cellular connection while in the swamp. Most importantly for me, it's searchable through a GIS platform. It makes it easy for me to zoom into a specific site when looking for data or get a better understanding of the site's spatial relationships with other sites, with passes, with islands and other things. Another fantastic feature is the ability to add and access photos of the site. If the cellular network connections are spotty, you can make notes and just add them later. But actually, in my case, Rachel made the notes and added them later. I was very lucky to have a great writer in the field. However, connections in my park seem to be fairly reliable most of the time. One of the most remarkable things that strikes me as I'm writing this, and in 1 year, 6 days actually surveying sites, not including the 3D scanning, we were able to make available in Arches, a readily accessible format, a lot of information on a third of the park sites. 130 sites, and we have access to over a third of them. That's phenomenal. It includes hundreds of photographs where none had been recorded for some of these sites previously. There's photographs, just they're scattered everywhere. I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. I think I'm just beginning to appreciate the importance of this visual documentation. And I know there was a discussion during the break, and photo points. I'm looking for, always looking for the best way to establish them, especially in a dynamic, changing environment like a tropical hardwood hammock on a coastline. Next slide. So one of my goals, I think I discussed this, was to determine the feasibility of using the HMS volunteers for the work. And we did bring the volunteers from the Charlotte Harbor Environmental Center, and Rachel provided them with information and an intro to the HMS program. But we weren't able to tap into that resource because the COVID shut down. So Rachel did use the reporting tools in Arches, and it allowed me to see that it's possible for trained volunteers to report on the condition of some of the park's cultural resources. It's not really that different in using park volunteers at any capacity in a state park. As long as they're well trained and well supervised, the volunteers in HMS would be just about the same as the ones you trust to represent your park at your ranger station. They'd be the same as the ones you trust to do plumbing work or electrical work. I don't see, well, there's a different aspect to cultural resources, but I still see, as long as they're well trained and well supervised, HMS volunteers could definitely help to further our CRM. Arches is almost perfect for our needs. It's providing the park with an easy to use repository for the wealth of data that we spend so much blood, sweat, and tears to acquire. The data can now be shared with other trusted users, and they won't even have to search through thousands of documents, photos, slides. I've got cassette tape oral interviews regarding some of these sites, and not to mention tens of thousands of digital files and photographs, slides even, that are in a dozen different formats. I've got stuff that I don't even know if I could find a hard drive to use it in. So to get stuff, at least starting now, in that repository would be very helpful. Next slide. So as conditions begin to normalize, as it were, with pandemic and post-pandemic work routines, I'm looking forward to opportunities to use the HMS program again. And continue the work that we've started. I mean, I'm going to continue it on my own and with park staff, but I'd definitely be willing to look at some volunteers and maybe get another presentation for another group or the same group. At the very least, I have a better understanding of what I may or may not be asking of the volunteers before I send them out to survey a site. Of course, I had a pretty good understanding of what visiting a site entails, but this project helped me to better see what it would be like from a volunteer's perspective. I'm looking forward to continuing the park's use of Arches, in addition to updating the master site file when necessary. But my main CRM goal for this coming fieldwork season is to get a very basic survey reported for the rest of the sites in the park. I think that FPAN has found another fantastic way to protect Florida's incredible cultural resources, and I think we're just scratching the surface of the volunteer interest and their willingness to participate with HMS. I can't wait to see HMS in a park with a very active, proactive, and eager for work park with a lot of volunteers. I mean, because there's a bunch of them out there who who are tired of cleaning campgrounds and campground bathrooms, and they would love to do some stuff like this. And those folks could be of great help. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add, but we are here for questions that anyone might have. Thank you, John. That was wonderful.